Imagine a world where children grow up confident, resilient, and equipped to handle life's challenges. What if there were tools to help them build these skills early on? Today, Jim and Ryan sit down with Patty Gornick, a dedicated life coach for children, who's on a mission to empower young minds. Get ready to discover the impact life coaching can have on children and why it's more important than ever in today's fast-paced world.
Wake up, it's time to rise. Talking money with sharp insight. Jim and Ryan here to guide. Mastering the money ride. Saving stacks and planning dreams. Living large by honest means. Tune in now for the schemes. Breaking down financial themes. Money mindset every day.
Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Money Mindset Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Jim, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime, Ryan Genoe. Ryan, how are things today?
As always, it's going great, and I'm really excited about this one. I know this is I feel like this is self-serving this episode because we're having a kid coach, or Coach Patty, on here to help talk about kids' mindsets, and it's a large portion of what I do with my son, and I know as being a coach for sports too. So this is really exciting how I can continue to grow in all aspects of my life. And then again, we're all big kids too. So I think it will help for everybody. So
yes,
You're right.
kids.
Yes. Well, today's title is Empowering Young Minds, a conversation with children's life coach, Patty Gornick. Patty, thank you very much for joining us. How are you this evening?
Oh, great. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here tonight and to share all about life coaching with you as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because, so full disclosure, Patty, you and I have known each other now for about 20 years. And we've kind of been in and out of each other's lives over the 20-year period. And recently there was some communication going back and forth with one of the companies that we work with, and they'd asked you for your title, and I saw that your title was Children's Life Coach. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, I've been really, maybe I'm ignorant to it, but I know what a life coach is, and I've always assumed that it was just for adults, grown-ups. Never really considered a child needing a life coach. So I reached out to you and I thought, this would be a fascinating topic to share with our clients and our viewers and listeners as well. And what I would like to say to our viewers and listeners, if you have any questions, you want to make any comments at all about this, just go in the social media comment section and go ahead and post your questions there, and we'll be able to address them along the way, or reach out to us even after the fact. So, Patty, let's talk about children's life coach. Like, what is the role of a life coach for children?
I love how you mentioned, like, normally you never hear this for children. And this is what intrigued me for even looking into this curriculum. Because normally life development always starts with when you're older. And really those core values, those core beliefs, those belief systems that we encounter is really when it starts when we're younger. That's really when we're always looking out for what we want to do. And we start acquiring all these beliefs in ourselves based on the circumstances around us. So, children have always been a great big part of my life. I've always loved being around children, making them feel heard and welcome, and always been a very big cheerleader, as you can say, is making them go for their dreams and trying out no matter what the obstacles are, because really the obstacles in life is what's going to push us over to the next level. And so when I came across this curriculum, and it was 2021, basically, this really started off with my own children. I was blessed with having 2 children of my own. And it just started off with, because of COVID, everybody was at home on the computers, on the system. So this just started off with stories at nighttime. Instead of reading a book, it was stories. And it was stories of children coping with different circumstances in life, which really intrigued me, because then when we would hear it, my kids, without even experiencing certain issues, whether it would be peer pressure or failure or dealing with not making it on a specific team, hearing the stories opened up conversations for us. And so, we would just go ahead, listen to the story, go to bed. And then as the weeks progressed and I heard them telling the stories to their friends and their friends asking to hear the stories, that's really where I came about and saying, you know what, I'm going to take this course and I'm going to teach the life skills through the adventure and wisdom, because it really does open up a whole different conversation with families that normally you wouldn't talk about, because in today's world it is different, right? So when I would try to have conversations with my family about my kids, what I did, they'd be like, Mom, that was your days. And they're so right. It is so different today, especially with social media. So
And
life coaching.
it's so different too when we were kids, because I mean, you and I come from a European Italian background, and we couldn't talk to our parents about life stuff really, right? Like it was just so different for us as children growing up. We kind of had to try to figure things along the way on our own without really much guidance, right?
That's right, because we knew our values, right? We knew to do things with integrity. It was just like through our own experiences, right? And through our friends, right? But in today's world, it's so different. They see things live. They see things instantly. Everything just happens so fast for them. So to give them the coping skills to get through the circumstances is really where I had that aha moment, but really when they would perceive it into what was happening in their world outside, whether it's through social media, whether it's through texting, because there is no communication anymore. It's all texting. It's all computer.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, even with my kids, we might FaceTime on occasion, but it's either Snapchat, iMessage, texting, Instagram messages. Like that's the form of communication with my kids, right? And I think it is with most. Like, I think if I called my kids on a phone and the phone rang, they'd probably freak out because they wouldn't really recognize what that sound is.
Yes,
Right?
right? Because they're like, and it's just text messaging. So when they have to come through to have a conversation, it really is to watch them have a conversation with their friends nowadays. It's like a coping skill they have to learn, right? So life coaching, I always say it helps them manage through change, because life is full of changes. So whether it's going to a new school, not getting into that same league as your friend, it's coping skills to deal with it. So life coaching can really give you a positive mindset to proactively still follow your dreams. And it's through storytelling is how I do it.
Well, let me ask you this question, because this comes up a lot, and maybe it's because I'm in my 50s now, and we grew up in again a different era and did different things. But there's this whole debate about now there isn't a first, second, or third when kids are competing, right? Everyone gets some form of participation badge, and now we're starting to see the effects of that translate in school, like high school, and we're also starting to see some of that now translate in the workforce, because it seems like the young adults now struggle with that competition of the real world. What are the thoughts around participation badges over having a first, second, third? I'm just asking, this is kind of off script right now, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
But out of curiosity, I'd like your opinion on that.
So just for in schools, when we were going to school, I mean, if you didn't do well, we were pushed back. And that failure, that pushback was just making us, go forward and doing it over and over again until we actually understood what we were getting into, whether it be math, whether it be reading, whether it be writing. We were told when something wasn't right, and we were given that opportunity to strengthen that skill. Today, everybody's a path. And so it actually, it gives them a positive and a negative effect, because nobody wants any child to feel left behind. But also there does come that roadmap, like you said, that once they do hit, whether it's high school, university, that's really where that change of comparison comes through with friends that they've come through every grade, that you hit grade 9 and you're not able to go into that same school your friends going into, right? So that comparison, that self-awareness can really be devastating to that child. So this is where life coaching comes in and says, okay, so where can we fix that path, right? Understanding the value of what we know, but also understanding what we have control over. So we don't have control over what, everybody's doing right now, giving you an award for participation, which is great. It encourages them to try different things. But I do think there's got to be a limit there as well, because when you do go to the workforce, not everybody gets a raise, not everybody gets a promotion at the same time. There are steps you need to take like anything else, right?
Yeah, I guess so you're helping them kind of build and prepare for that as they get older, because I know I'll use my brother as an example. He owns a grocery store, and he does sometimes some hiring along the way, and he'll have like some form of hiring fair. And there have been a few times where you would have like the parent of the teenager show up for the interview and an application, and my brother's like, are you applying for the job, like which one? And it's the parent who's doing it on behalf of the kid.
Yeah.
And that's not reality in the real world, right? So I think I agree with you there. I think there's some positives to kind of this shift in that mindset, right? Because we don't want to leave anybody behind. But I agree with you as well, as that could be hurting them at some point in the future, and you would come in to potentially help them kind of prepare for adult, I guess, life, which, as far as I can say, is delayed for as long as you possibly can, right? Because it's not what it's all cracked up to be.
No, well, life is full. Yeah, well, life is full of setbacks, and life is full of challenges, and you can't always have somebody speaking up for you. We really do need to take ownership. So like, for instance, you have children upset over, those surprise tests or surprise quizzes. And when we deal with that, I mean, I do sessions individually, but I also do them in groups. And what I love to hear is when people are comparing, right, about teachers and courses, but really when I have them sit back and I have them reevaluate, why are they giving you surprise tests? It's not to scare you, but it's actually to make you aware of where you need to focus a little bit more and what can we do, right? Let's power shift that and try to understand why we're giving that surprise test. It's not to fail you. It's actually to be an eye opener of where we need to have a little bit more extra help or ask the teacher for extra help. So we're always playing the victim of it's because of him and it's because of her, because of the teacher. Let's take ownership a little bit. And because in my days, you know what, my mother never sat with me and did my homework, right? And when you failed, you knew you had to go and study a little bit harder. In today's world, they can just Google and grab that information. And so it's challenging in both ways, but at the same time, I want every child to know that no matter what obstacles they're faced, they can get through it. And with the right support and with the right guidance, nobody is trying to trick you in life. Life is an adventure, and to take it on, to go out there, give it your best. It's all awesome. We ask for every child to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, my experience, another extreme, like I never got anything less than a B, because my father would threaten that if I came home with a C, that he'd kick me out of the house, right? And when you're in grade 2 and grade 3, if your dad says like you're going to be out of the house, you're thinking you're going to be homeless, like you believe it, right?
100%.
But that put a different level of pressure. So I don't recommend that you do that with your kids today, because that wasn't healthy. But man, it sure motivated me to make sure that I didn't get any less than a B. Yeah,
that's right. I always say your mark does not define you, and the school system is going to slowly change with this AI and all this other stuff that's available. But it's the effort you put in, right? So when there's a failure mark, what did you do? Let's sit down and say, what can I do to make it better? Because some kids, you know what, they don't need to study as long and they get it like this. And some kids study all night and still don't get it. So that comparison with their buddies or their peers is really it could really crush them. And just knowing that anything is possible with time, with patience, with persistence, and with consistency. And it's you doing it, you doing the work. I could give you, and for instance, I would say to all one of my sessions, I can give them all the same stories and tell them to draw the characters out. They all have a different vision. There is no right and there is no wrong.
Yeah.
It's how you perceive the story, and it's how you
Yeah.
understand that skill and get past that hurdle. It could be about somebody, you know, daring you to do something, getting out of a situation. If somebody were to say something, it's mean to you, how do you get out of that situation, right? Because a lot of times it's not what is said to you, but who says it. And it could be a teacher that you look up to. It could be an aunt. It could be an uncle. It could be anybody. But it's those words that could really crush the self-esteem of a child. So just helping them get past it, get past that hurdle. It's and when they're afraid to do something and they say, Coach Patty, how do I get my nerves to leave me? And I'm like, it's doing what makes you scared. And they're like, what? I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I tell them, go home and tell your parents to show you a video. The first time you walked, I can guarantee you fell. We didn't stop you from trying again the next day and the next day. And eventually you ran, right? Or the first time you went swimming, it's overcoming those hurdles, right?
Yeah.
Or the first time you went for a bike ride, right? We all start different skills in life. But even though you have the skills, it's when you're out there, you're every day making choices for yourself. Every day.
That's amazing. And going back to the effort part, like that's the one thing that I say to both my kids, both smart in their own way. One is definitely more academic than the other. But the one that's not academic, so my son, the younger one, he's really hard on himself when he doesn't have a good grade in his test. It happened actually literally today when he came home from school, right? And my wife and I always say, listen, if you put in the effort, that's all we ask of you, right? If you're
Right.
slacking and failing, that's one thing. But if you're putting in the effort and you feel you've done the best that you possibly could,
Yeah.
that's all we want. That's all we care about, right? Because you're not going to be great at every single course that's out there. There are going to be ones that you struggle with. I tell him my failures. You know, I'm like, hey, I failed grade 10 science myself. Like I wasn't into science and I had to repeat it. Like that's okay, right? So I like that you mentioned that it is about the effort because I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, right?
Always. It's
Yeah,
always, it's what you're putting
yeah.
out, you will get back, right?
Now, I'm going to make one more comment, and then I know Ryan's probably dying to step in here. I'm hogging like
Yeah.
all the questions,
No,
but
no.
the one comment I do want to make is this: what I've noticed, which is actually fantastic with the younger generation now, and Ryan, you might even probably experience the same thing as I. Like I grew up playing sports, and in sports, I know when I grew up, kids were really mean to each other. Like even if you're on the same team, like if there was someone who wasn't athletic and wasn't very good at running or scoring or whatever it was, kids were really, really mean. What I'm noticing, and my son's into basketball, kids aren't really like. I haven't noticed it. Like they're more supportive of each other now, right? So if they see that one kid that's maybe not as athletic or not as skilled, like I'm seeing his teammates like surrounding that player and motivating them and encouraging them and helping them, and I'm like, wow, like that's definitely different from what I'm used to from growing up, right? Right. I don't know if you experience the same thing as well. And walkers in sports now, like, do you notice a bit of a shift or a change in that mindset?
I think it all depends on the sport and what stage they're at when it comes to the sport. For Walker, he sees two different between hockey and soccer, right? And again, everything I've observed, it comes down to the level they're at. When he was playing house league sports, very supportive, and for myself being a coach too, being able to come down on the kids and not really come down on them, but say, hey, we're here as a team. If one fails, we're all failing. So we're here to support each other and lift each other up. So there's a lot of conversation. And Walker was always amazing in that, especially when he played ball hockey. It was almost like having an extra coach on the team because when he saw other kids that were struggling, he'd stop and help explain it. And kind of going back to the idea within the classroom too. I found, I volunteered as a teacher for quite some time, and I always found our ability as an adult, we had a hard time explaining certain things to kids. And for those kids who got it, I always found it was a great motivation and also for them to be able to lead and teach the kids that didn't quite get it yet. And I saw more success, and the grades always went up significantly when we saw kids helping other kids, because they were able to explain at their level. And when I'm having trouble with Walker, which isn't very often, but it's always like, okay, when I was in his shoes as a child, what did he need? What did I need as a kid? What kind of support would I have liked here? And I try to kind of go along that way, the best that I can. I'm not perfect.
Good.
And I tell, as you've said, nobody's perfect. I tell Walker, hey, I'm not going to be the best at this, but I'm going to work through it together, and I'm going to support you, and I hope you'll support me. And we see that along the way. So, I think one of the things I'm really interested in is the resilience piece, especially around the emotions of kids. And it goes to sports, it goes to every activity, goes to life. We talk about in our podcast when it came to financial literacy, breaking down different age groups and at different levels in which kids grow from different stages and where they learn their beliefs. And I know there's books I was trying to look up before that helped me a lot early on in even Walker's development and my development as becoming a parent. But there's key moments in kids' life and development, ages 3 to 5 and then 6 to 8 and stuff like that. There's exactly. And I guess my question to you is, what are some tips and tricks that you have, especially when it comes to helping kids build emotional resilience when it comes to anything in life?
So I always say all emotions are welcome, right? Understand that all emotions are welcome and don't push them away. Acknowledge them when they happen. Okay, so my motto as Powerful Minds with Patty, I always say, we think it, we feel it, we can change it. What do I mean by that? And we always say it at the beginning of every session. And I always tell them, we're not feeling scared without thinking something scared. And there's a powerful story that through the adventures and wisdom that we go through, it's called self-taught. And it's about being your BFF. And I'll just give you a brief run through right now. If I were to ask you both, who do you talk to the most throughout the day? What would be your answer?
Myself.
Love that. I love that. I love that because that is the answer.
Doesn't mean it's positive, right? That's a problem, right?
Well,
but I'm the one that I talk to the most with myself.
I love that. Yes. Okay. So when we understand that we're talking to ourselves way before talking to anybody in any situations, pay attention to those thoughts, because that's where our confidence comes in, right? Are we saying to ourselves that we can do it? Is it positive self-talk or is it negative self-talk? And through one of the stories that we have this the wise wizard that comes in throughout the story to teach the kids the skill. So just as an example, one morning after getting down on herself, Trudy is visited by Wyatt the wise wizard. And Wyatt lets Trudy experience what her negative self-talk would sound like coming from one of her best friends. So this is when all the kids have their wow moment. When they hear her talking through her friend, she is shocked that her friend would talk to her that way. And even more so, shocked, and found out the words that her friend used were the exact same words that she would talk to herself about first thing in the morning, just before practice, just before starting something out. Trudy discovers that her positive self-talk is the secret to creating her own self-esteem. See, one thing that kids have to learn is we don't give you self-esteem. We don't give you that. You give it to yourself by going after what you really want. And how do we do that? We self-assess what we're going through. If we're nervous, when we teach them that you're nervous because your body is going in alert, maybe it's doing something that you've never done before, and that's okay. And this is where your support system comes in, because sometimes children will try something just because their best friend is trying it and they got that little encouragement, or just because they saw it on the internet and they thought it was exciting. So something triggers a child to go out and try it. So with positive self-talk, Trudy learns that becoming your own BFF, your own cheerleader, is really what's going to get you through the obstacles in life. And the way the children then, come up with their own, oh, yes, that happened to me. One child was saying she remembered going to Canada's Wonderland for the very first time. Now, when we went to Canada's Wonderland, our days, we didn't know what these rides were going to be. We didn't know how many Loop-a-Loops there would be. These kids are able to go on and see beforehand. So it either can encourage them to go on the ride or it could really scare them. Okay. But it's only with experience that they're really going to see whether they enjoyed it or not, right? Whether they want to go back and do it again. So understanding how your mind works and understanding your positive self-talk is really a tool that it's with practice. And every time that they do practice, today I just got an email today saying, now I understand what neural pathways are, Coach Patty. So sometimes hearing the story, they haven't gone through the skill just yet. But when they do, it's being proactive, having those skills and saying, yeah. And I said, what did you do? And they said, I just told my body, I'm doing something new. I'm building neural pathways. So when I start the program, I'm like, your body, your mind is like your own personal computer. And you get to download all these beautiful things that you want to achieve in life. And understanding that you always got the support. And when you fail or when you don't want to do it or when you're scared, you have the support system to do it and to go for it. So understanding your self-talk and understanding what we say to ourselves, when we're scared, you just stop yourself and say, what am I thinking? Is it supporting or is it limiting me? If it's limiting you, why? Why is it limiting you? Are you afraid of judgment? Are you afraid of the fear? Understand why you're scared of it. And sometimes when you just look back and you sit back and you're talking to somebody else, you're willing to go for it. And seeing that aha moment with the kids or them talking to their friend, I'm like, what would you say to your best friend if you saw them being down on themselves and blaming themselves for what just happened? What would you say? And then I have them look in the mirror and I have them know that the one most important person that you ever have to take care of is that person looking back at you. Tell yourself, if you fall, I'm going to get you back up. If you're getting hurt, I'm going to help you. If you need help, I will get help. I always got your back.
That's amazing.
And when you know you've got support, you're the number one person that's going to actually be able to shift your thoughts.
I saw an acronym for FEAR, which was false evidence appearing real. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
Yes. It's amazing because sometimes children are telling themselves stories, right? And they're scaring themselves before even attempting it. And then when they do it, I always say to them, have you ever tried something recently that you thought was so scary and then you tried it because of whatever, and they have to fill in the blank. It could be because, my brother did it and I went to go do it, or my best friend did it. And then what? Whether that's scary or whether it's exciting, would you do it again or wouldn't you? What puts you through that? What made you cross over your comfort zone? And they'd be like, wow. So some things that they would never think of through these storytellings, it's proactively getting them prepared for the ups and downs in life. And that's why I say, we can be there and we can support our children. We can try to stop certain things, but it's only through the experience really that they'll understand what we mean. And that's when the support from our parents, our coaches, and everybody comes and not says, well, I told you so. It was just, I know what you're going through, right? And doing what happened, what are we going to do tomorrow to make a difference? So
yeah, I think this is one of those call outs for us as parents, is to not impose our fears on our kids, right? And instead allowing them to experience, and I'm not saying jump off a cliff or anything.
No.
With a parachute, of course, but allowing yourself to test your boundaries, to understand what your limits are going through that. So,
I'm glad you said that because, I remember as a kid, my mom was afraid of thunder and lightning. And because she was afraid of it, she would run to the basement and we all had to run to the basement with her and we couldn't go near the window. And I remember at some point, I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this because I'm not afraid of the thunder and the lightning, but because my mom was, or there's a lot of things I didn't do because it was her fears, like you said, right?
That's right. You
Like now,
acquired her beliefs. Yeah.
yeah, now that I'm older, when there's thunder and lightning outside, I'll light up a cigar and I'll sit outside and I'll actually enjoy it because it's beautiful. But I remember a great situation where our daughter Serena, so she was I think 4 years old, and she started her in Girl Scouts, and it was her first weekend camping trip.
Oh, yes.
And I know Carol, she was like really nervous about it and didn't know if she should go, and just kept going on about it, and very anxious because it was the first time your little
Away.
kid is exactly right. And I remember stopping because and not that I wasn't a little bit nervous or concerned, but I remember saying to Carol, I'm like, is Serena afraid of going?
Or, yeah.
And she's like, no, like she really wants to go. And I'm like, well, you know what? Us being afraid of her going away, that's our fear. That's our problem. That's not her. If she was afraid to go, different story, right? But if she's not afraid, we can't hold her back. And sure enough, she went and she enjoyed it, and it was a wonderful time, right? But I agree with you, is we can't instill our fears in our children. They have to experience it themselves. It's their own life, it's their own experiences. I totally agree with you there. So sorry, Ron, you're going to ask something else or say something.
Well, I'm interested, like, how do we continue, especially on the communication piece with kids, is how do we continue to encourage, and what kind of words or questions do we ask to encourage kids to express themselves more effectively? I've been at parents' houses where I've seen like the communication wheel, and we know the basics like sad, angry, happy, but there's like 122.
There's so many to look forward to, but look out for. But as a parent, you know your child the best. So when you see your child that just loves doing something, and then all of a sudden just doesn't have an interest now, being very sociable to not being sociable, there's little triggers that as a parent, you're always like, oh, that's not like you. We always know our kids the best. And when we see that shift, sometimes an event happened that really our kids just maybe don't want to talk to us about. And through time, what I say to children is, maybe you don't want to talk to your parents that day about it. Write it down. We have different journals. I give them journals that trigger a feeling. Why is it that you don't want to do that thing that you loved, right? So I always have an assessment with the children if I'm doing one-on-one to see exactly where they're at, what their interests are. And if their interest change is one thing, but if your interest changed because of a block there, and it could be because of, self-doubt. All of a sudden you were the best player, and from that best player, you went to a higher team and you're no longer that best player. Sometimes you second guess it, that maybe I'm not who I was, right? So that could really be a shift where instead of them coming through, a downhill and never doing that sport again, getting the support, their parents actually seeing that change and saying, you know what, maybe you don't want to talk to me about it, but go to this group session or go talk to somebody else. And sometimes just seeing it, sometimes we can tell our kids to do something 1,000 times, they won't do it. And then they're at somebody else's house and they do it. You've done your job, right? They're getting it in there. It's in their subconscious mind, but they're just comfortable with you. And that's why when we look at different shifts of our children, we know that something's not right. Getting it out of them. And I always say, have a little one-on-one with family. At the end of every year, I'd love to have families do a little vision, right? A little vision board to see what their successes are for next year, what their interests are, because then you can see where they're actually changing, right? Are they changing their friends? Are they changing their values? Are they changing their ideas? So really, what are they thinking of? What are their goals? And as a parent, you can see, well, why did that change? So somebody who loved hockey or soccer or baseball can have a change, which is fine, but you just want to make sure that change is not coming from self-doubt or from a comment made by somebody else, right? Don't crush your dreams because somebody else's vision for you is what I say. The power of possibility is endless, but getting through those obstacles is really where you have your own aha moments. Don't aha me, aha yourself. My kids come back and say, look what I got. I'm like, that's right. You got it.
Mm-hmm.
You got it. You got it with your efforts. You got it with your studying. You got it with your persistence. You got it with achieving your goal. So never be disappointed. They always say, I don't want to disappoint, the parents or here or there. And I'm like, don't forget about that. What do you want out of life? And when children understand that, because they always feel like everybody else is deciding what they want in life, right? And as they hit a certain age, they want that power of saying, I'm big now. I can make my decisions. You can. So if you know you got homework, right? If you know you got practice, show your parents that you have the responsibility to do A, B, C, D, the things you need to do before going out there and playing ball or doing whatever you want with your friends. So showing responsibility is huge. But going back to that, yeah, so a parent would always see a little bit of a change, and sometimes the conversation piece, not knowing how to get it into that play. I always send back a wisdom for home sheet with the children after the story, and it's a conversation, and there's questions and there's activities that the family can do together to really open up the area of if it's fear, if it's letting go of something, if it's moving past through failure. There's always a questionnaire that the children can do with their parents.
Ryan, I just got to step away for a minute. Can you take over the next question for me?
Yeah. Well, I think the big one that I'm excited to talk to you about too is something we talk a lot about within our coaching cash flow solutions is the growth mindset and the behaviors around the understanding, which we kind of talked about already. The understand where your habits and behaviors came from, were they passed on generationally about talking about money, things like that. But the cultivating a growth mindset, what are some strategies that you tackle with kids and, for that matter, parents? Because I love that you use take-home stuff, questions to open up dialogue at home, because I think a lot of parents really struggle with that, whether they're willing to admit that or not. We do. Like, there's no true handbook on being a parent, right? We're just kind of, guess what, kids? We're all making it up as we go along, right? And at some point they'll learn too. So
and that's through experience that they're going to learn 100%. But in terms of having that guide, there is no real set right or wrong answer. Is where I tell children, everybody goes through experiences very differently. So, for instance, with the self-talk, let's just go back to the self-talk. I'll bring back an activity where you can do with your family in terms of, number one, understand where that feeling is coming from. What's your thought? So, for instance, we'll go through situations. So if one situation where somebody's feeling really bad because somebody called them a name, what's your feeling? Are you feeling embarrassed? Right? What's the action? What can we do? So what's your negative self-talk telling you? And then there's positive self-talk. So there's a chart that comes in. What can we do if we get a negative comment? Be prepared for what you want to say back to that person. What would you say back? And it depends on who that person is. You ask them to repeat it, because sometimes when you ask somebody to repeat it, whether it's an adult, whether it's a teacher, doesn't matter who it is. I always tell parents, we teach children how to be respectful. I really want to teach children that they need to be respected as well. So when you come across a situation where, you know what, that feeling, it's just like doing something that you know is not right. Your stomach, your gut tells you something's not right, right? And sometimes with peer pressure, you might do something that you know is not right, but getting out of that situation is really key. And this is where we do role playing, right? What would you do in this situation if somebody threatened you? What would you do in this situation if you knew something wasn't right? What would you do in this situation to help somebody out? So feeling the fear. I'm too afraid to do it. I'm not going to do it. So-and-so is going to make fun of me. How can we power shift that? How can we turn that around? Hey, if they're really, truly my friend, they're going to support my decision. And if they don't, then maybe that's not the right friend for me. So there's different scenarios. And then when you're in a group, they're like, oh yeah, that happened to me. So hearing it from other people or other peers with different experiences, some with older siblings as well, can bring in a whole different ball game there. But as a parent, you can say facing a hard task. You know what? Sometimes we have to do what we don't like to do, right? Whether it's chores, whether it's saving money, putting a little bit aside. In the long run, these are skills that we're teaching them that will truly bring great value to them. So as a parent, sometimes we do have to do the hard tasks of teaching them, the skills of life. But at the end, we always say there's a reason why we are learning these skills. And it's to get you off those obstacles of either it's a big change, you're moving schools, your friends moving schools. So change does occur. And some people are excited with change and some people just freeze. So how do we get past that change? And we have different scenarios in the workbook to say, you know what, why are we scared of this change? What are the pros and the cons of the change? I don't know where you are now, but I'm dealing a lot with children who have the fear of as a parent, you teach them how to sleep by themselves in their bedroom, and you go through those nights of fear. Where right now we're having a lot of break-ins in our area, right? How does that child understand that fear of not being safe in your own home, right? Getting past that fear and understanding the circumstances that happens around us and what we have control over, and guiding them to understand that things can happen around us that we have no control over, but yet we do have the support.
Our next episode is with a jiu-jitsu master, I guess, Jim.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I just had a student that, for the first time, she's going for her belt and very nervous. And that's exciting, right? It's that moment when you have to go up there and face everything you've learned up until now, all that kata, all those skills, and show it to the world, right? The first time you do that, it's going to be scary. So steps that I tell her to do is, let's practice it over and over again. So you know it. Let's get a mirror, right? Let's do it in front of somebody else so you can see how you look. And then do it in front of somebody that, is normally not in your classes, just to get that little jitters off. So there's steps that we can do to program our mind, to tell our mind, hey, we're doing this. And it doesn't matter who's in front of us. We're going to do it anyway. And why are we doing it? We're doing it to get that belt. And we've put in the effort each and every week to go out there and know this kata. So telling yourself, the self-talk kicks in right here, right? I can do it. I've practiced. I know I can do it. And if it doesn't work out, you're still going to go back next week. Your sensei is still going to be there to support you and get it the next time, right? Failure is not the end road. Failure is just giving you that heads up to say, hey, we can do it again.
The experience that people need, right? And
100%.
I was just reading a mindset book with Walker last night, and it talked about failure and how people like Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan and all these hockey players, Wayne Gretzky's quote, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
You don't take, yeah.
Failure is inevitably the success from that, right? So
yeah, and when you tell a kid, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, the more times you fail, the better you're going to get at it. And they're like, what? And that's where we say the power of possibilities too. We always make them look up who they look up to, whether it's a singer, a player. We always say, I always say, let's do a review of how they came in their path. And when they see how many times they failed and how many no's they got, but you know what? They didn't give up. And that's why they are where they are. It gives the children encouragement to move forward. So every little support, a parent, a teacher, a coach can help them see that, you know what they're looking at is the big picture. But to get there, it's all the obstacles. And those obstacles is really where your self-confidence comes in and your superpowers come in. So I love what I do, and to see children embrace it and understand that obstacles and your mindset is really, I can tell you you're good. I can tell you can do it. I could tell you that you can do it. But unless you're willing to just go for it and give it a try, that's the only way you're really going to learn. Right. And understanding your emotions is key.
Yeah. Now, we're quickly approaching the 45-minute mark. So yeah, I know it's
It
amazing.
goes by so fast.
It does. So we're probably going to start to wind it up a little bit. But have we talked about the process, the coaching process at
No,
this point?
that was next. Was you mentioned parents,
All right.
coaching process. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So, for coaching process, right now, what I do is I do one-on-one. I do have an assessment with the parents to see if there's a specific skill. So if somebody's shy, if somebody's not, if they're afraid of failure, but really what I say is the program, understanding how your mind works is really the core. Understanding your self-talk is really key. So when I do sessions, I like to do 5 sessions out of the program, whether it's mind power, understanding how your mind works, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, your neural pathways. Teaching children this, it's like giving them their own little magic wand and saying, wow, I've got the power to change it. So when they are in that situation, instead of looking at that situation, they become their own little, I guess, their own little hero is where I like to always start off with mind power. So the process is they come in, we will assess, or I can spot coach to see which best suits the child. And we work off of once a week or whatever fits their schedule. And we do a 5-week program. And normally within that 5 week, then they'll come back and they'll do the me power, and the inner power. So there's different segments. I always try to figure which one would be best for that child. But I also always say, I stress to parents, it's always good. Sometimes people think they always work best one-on-one, but having a group session and understanding how everybody else experiences different things in life really is an eye-opener to children,
different
especially
or
in their own age group.
yeah, different or even the same for that matter. Because a lot of the times we feel like we're going it alone, but in the meantime, everybody else is experiencing it, and
Yes.
everybody's at different levels where they can, again, going back to my point, which was we can help each other, right?
Yes.
Solve what you've been through. I was going through that last week. So
Yes.
um,
I
so
love that.
how else can parents get involved to reinforce these skills? And then I guess our next question is, how do people get in touch with you?
So yes, so for myself is through Instagram or Patty Wisdom Coach at gmail.com. And I'll send you all the information of how to get started. But in terms of parents, I send them, no child goes home without a recap of what was heard, what was discussed. And through that, it's an overview of questions, of role playing, the story itself. So, for instance, just over the last month when parents had teacher interview, one of the teachers says, "What happened?" She's like participating. She's like talking. It's fantastic. And so, just even hearing that little baby step right there, somebody just participating in a classroom, and your teacher noticed it by just coming. It was an aha moment for the parents to say, "Wow, she actually spoke up, or she wanted to be a part of something." It just the little baby steps is what encourages the parents then to say, well, you know what, it's actually the stories itself is really where children put themselves in that situation and then remember the skill that is being taught, and then they use it in their own way. And it doesn't matter how you use it, it's just you getting past that.
Well, that's great. Well, Patty, we really enjoyed this session. I wish it was longer, but we do
Yes,
like
thank
to
you.
keep it under an hour or so.
No, I get
We
it.
may, yeah, we might have a follow up with you if you're okay with that.
I'd love
Um,
that. Yes.
yeah, but what I would say is for anyone who's out there who's listened, watched, and there's some interest and you'd like to engage Patty, if you can't find her for whatever reason on Instagram, whatever else, reach out to Ryan and I as well. We definitely know how to get a hold of Patty, so we'd be more than
Thank you.
happy to connecting our clients. So, Ryan, what are some ways that people can find us again?
tvhfinancial.ca. They can call us because Jim's going to tell you what the phone number is. We're also on
647-727-4668.
Right.
we're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Not quite doing dances quite yet. One other quote that I came up with that I read with Walker a week ago was, "A winner is a loser who tried one more time." And we read that over it a couple times and had him talk to me about what that felt like. And it was very interesting, even though he's, 9 or 10, just hear his thought process when it comes to it. Right. So it's very important for parents to have these discussions and find some really great books. And I was going to ask, and maybe you can just send it to us, what are a couple books that you recommend for kids and parents to read together? Because I'm constantly reading with Walker and always looking for the new book. The Warrior Way is one that I've started reading. 7 Habits of Highly Effective Kids.
7, yeah. Well, those are the 2 that I just had here for me, but also Adventured Wisdom came out with a tool guide as well on my website. I put it there, but those 2 are my top.
All right, I'm right on, bang on. Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
You know what? Just the habits of how they explain it to parents and to children. And like you said, hearing it from a child's perspective on how they get that quote and how they come to understand it is really magical.
Yeah, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Kids.
Yeah.
The books have questions at the end, and Walker was 5, I want to say, when I first started reading, and I thought, I don't think he's paying attention enough that he's going to answer, but I asked him anyway, and to my surprise,
You're surprised, yeah.
I was just like, oh, okay, so get out there and I have no money involved in any of these books, by the way.
Me neither. Yes, I just have the 2 right here. I said, so you hit it right on the ball. So those are great.
All right.
Sometimes,
go ahead, Patty. Sorry.
No, I said sometimes just keeping it simple, but like you said, you're shocked, and I was shocked too, just from a children's perspective on how they actually grasp the concept. So as a parent, you were wowed, so was I. So it's nice.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'll ask everyone to like and share any of the platforms that they're watching or listening. We will be sending out the blog post. So if you're a reader and not a listener or a viewer, you can read the blog post. But Patty, once again, it was a pleasure. We really appreciate your time, and I encourage people to look up Patty to help you and your kids, because I think this is a wonderful service that you're offering, and I would definitely encourage everyone to reach out to you. So thank you once again, everyone. Have a good evening. Until next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Why is it